Welcome to Adventures of a Black Woman Sailor. This week I started a GoFundMe campaign about my quest to become the first black woman to circumnavigate the globe solo. This is a dream I've had for the past 4 years, but I only came out of the closet about it 6 months ago because I finally felt like I had enough sailing experience to be taken seriously. In the past 2 days, I have managed to raise $180, and 30% of that came from complete strangers. I am so grateful for this money. It's just about enough to allow me to have my engine to be hoisted into the boat. And another $45 donations, for example, would help me wire my mast and have it put up. I've also been offered resources. I've been offered 6 fenders, an anchor, and other things. And I've had a lot of really nice people sharing my campaign on Facebook and elsewhere. And along with that, I have also had a fair amount of trolling from racists. I have been called lazy, asking for handouts instead of working hard, as though me requesting sponsorship is somehow unique in the sailing community. I have been called not black enough, and I've been called some expletives that I will not repeat. And I think that the fact that there is so much overt racism in the sailing community is exactly why this trip is so important. I do not expect this to magically give black women the resources to buy fancy boats, but I do hope that it will serve as an example for young black girls who might have amazing dreams, but they lack confidence because of all the negative messages they receive from the media and society about their abilities. So I hope that you will check out my GoFundMe and read more about my goals and my plans and what I need to do in order to attain them, and also read about my sailing credentials, my experience, and also the all of the countless boat projects I've done on my previous boat, which was a Catalina 27. And today, in today's episode, I will be putting the finishing touches on the epoxy in the Coosa board in preparation to glass in the Coosa board with some chopped strand fiberglass mat. Since there are tiny little pieces of wax paper stuck to the Coosa board, it's taking a really long time to sand them all off because they're all in indentations where the rods used to be. That's why I couldn't peel them off in the first place. So I have to sand everything down to that level, and I could just leave them in there, but at this point I've come so far and I'm not going to ruin my project because certain parts of the fiberglass aren't laminating because of little pieces of wax paper. So I'm willing to do the work, but it is going to take me a while. The fine multi-master to scrape off 3 inches along the border of the vinyl wall coating so that I can prepare the boat for the fiberglass mat that has to be bonded 3 inches beyond the edge of all of the Coosa board surface that I've installed, because that's the only way that it'll be strong enough to really stick.
you can see, there's a lot of gummy residue still stuck to the fiberglass, and I'm gonna have to take that off with either more scraping or some adhesive cleaner.
At Fisheries Supply, we have product info sections when reps from certain manufacturers come to our store and teach us about their products for about an hour. It's called Fisco U, and they were doing a tutorial on the System 3 epoxy, and afterwards we got to play with some epoxy, and they let us take home the rest of what we were playing with, and I got to take the Gel Magic two-part kit. It's perfect for this stage of my project because I need to fill in the scored grooves for the 2 panels I did at first before I figured out that I needed to use wax paper. So the grooves on those panels are still open, and Gel Magic is different from the West system because it comes pre-thickened and it won't drip. I don't have to add any hardener or thickener rather or anything like that, and I can just apply it overhead without having to worry about the mess coming down on me. And also it's supposed to change colors when it's ready to be applied. It's a 2-to-1 ratio, unlike the West system, which is 5-to-1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of that, and 1, 2, 3 of that. So yeah, it's changing colors to clear, which means that it has mixed correctly. There are several reasons I was unable to film all of the work I just did. First, I discovered that the hood had come off on my coveralls and my hair had been bushing up against the wet epoxy, and I had to save my hair. Luckily I had a hairbrush in my backpack and I had to brush it out so that it wouldn't cure in my hair. And also, I got a phone call from the domestic violence helpline that I work at. I have a second job there, and it was the worst possible moment. My gloves were all sticky. The Gel Magic, I find, is a lot stickier than the West system, so I had to take off my gloves and while I was on the phone, the epoxy that I had in the pot started to have an exothermic reaction, which means that it gets hot, and the air, because it's sitting in the pot, it can't cool down, so it gets even hotter, and it's like a vicious cycle. So it gets hotter and hotter, and so I looked in the pot, and there was just a hard piece of epoxy in it. So that's just kind of an unfortunate series of events. Luckily, it wasn't that much left, so I didn't waste that much money. But I did manage to get a lot of the grooves filled in with a syringe. I first did the big ones with a larger syringe, and then I used a small syringe by filling it in from the big syringe, because you can't fit any kind of mixing stick that I have on hand into the smaller syringe. So I had to scramble and work really fast, and this is what it looks like all done. I still have a little bit to do. As you can see, there were still some small gaps and holes in the epoxy that I had filled in between the bigger grooves, and before the next episode I'm going to touch some of that up. I'm also going to sand down the parts of the epoxy that were sticking out or bulging down, so that I can have a nice smooth flat surface before I do the next step, which will be laminating the undersurface of the Coosa board with the chopped strand fiberglass mat. And thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week.